Hey folks, this is Riker, and the boss of Baldur's Gate 3 studio Larian has emerged this week as the hero we need, but don't deserve. An unpopular comment made by a Ubisoft executive has been making headlines this week, and Larian's Sven Vink has fired back. We're going to dive deep into this topic today, but we'll also talk a bit about how the Diablo 4 Season 3 reveal was handled, and what I think could have been done better. We'll talk about the Diablo 4 Season 3 patch notes, and who the big loser of the patch notes is. We'll talk about some new leaks about the Elden Ring expansion, the reveal trailer of Frostpunk 2, which is looking great, and we'll take a look at how healthy the population of the current Path of Exile expansion is, 1 month after release. But before we move on, just a quick word from this video's sponsor. I built my website, Riker.com, using Squarespace, and I was able to do everything myself, quickly and easily, and with zero education in the field, all thanks to how easy Squarespace is to work with. Watch how easily I update the Diablo lore section of my website to include my latest lore videos. Squarespace is flexible for any kind of website, with tons of templates that you can easily customize to your needs, no knowledge of coding required. And with their new Fluid engine, it's easier than ever. You can just drag and drop elements to move and resize them. You can even set up a custom merch shop with Squarespace now. You just design your products, and they handle production, inventory, shipping, everything that would be a nightmare for you to handle on your own. Basically, if you want to build a website, I recommend Squarespace. It's the all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. Stand out with a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything. Your products, content you create, even your time. Squarespace is offering my viewers 10% off your first purchase with them. Just go to squarespace.com/Riker or click the link in the description to start your free trial and start building your online presence. That's squarespace.com/RHYKKER and use code Riker to get started today. So, kicking things off with our main story. Ubisoft's latest move. A reshuffle in their subscription service that's caused a stir in the gaming world. So, let's break it down. First off, Ubisoft is splitting its subscription service into two. Ubisoft Plus Premium and Ubisoft Plus Classics. Ubisoft Plus Premium is like the deluxe edition of subscriptions for $17.99 a month. Yeah, that's almost the price of 3 Starbucks coffees. Yeah, you get early access to new games, monthly rewards, and a trip down memory lane with their back catalog. This plan combines the previous Ubisoft Plus multi-access and PC access into one, and it's available on PC, Xbox, and Amazon Luna. Who's even heard of that? If you were previously a PC Access plan subscriber, then congrats, you've been grandfathered in at $14.99 a month. Then there's Ubisoft Plus Classics, in case you decide $18 a month is too expensive. This package is solely focused on the back catalog of Ubisoft games. And for PlayStation players, it's actually bundled with PS Plus Extra and Premium subscriptions. Ubisoft Plus Classics will set you back $7.99 a month. Now, you might be wondering, why does Ubisoft think people will pay $18 a month just to play Ubisoft games? I mean, Xbox Game Pass has a library of hundreds of games from all manner of different developers. Well, let's remember, as part of the concessions that Microsoft made in order to acquire Activision Blizzard, Ubisoft got cloud streaming rights for Call of Duty and other Activision Blizzard titles for 15 years. Now, it was comments made by Philippe Tremblay, Ubisoft's director of subscriptions, that have been making headlines this week. And those headlines say that he said that we, gamers, need to get used to the idea of not owning our games. Yes, insert the quote, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy." Now, in fairness, those headlines are being a little uncharitable. What Tremblay actually said was, quote, "One of the things we saw is that gamers are used to a little bit like DVD having and owning their games. That's the consumer shift that needs to happen. They got comfortable not owning their CD collection or DVD collection. That's a transformation that's been a bit slower to happen in games. As gamers grow comfortable in that aspect, you don't lose your progress. If you resume your game at another time, your progress file is still there. That's not been deleted. You don't lose what you've built in the game or your engagement with the game. So it's about feeling comfortable with not owning your game." And he's not wrong. Yes, most people used to own movies on DVD and VHS cassettes back in the day, and don't get me started on beta. And while some people still do own movies, most people barely own any movies anymore. We just rely on streaming services. You can also make the same argument for music. People used to own vinyl records, tape cassettes, CDs, but nowadays most people just stream most of their music. But here's the thing. A movie? How many hours of my life will I invest into a movie? 2 if I watch it once, maybe 6 if I end up rewatching it a few times over a couple of years. The amount of effort needed to purchase, store, catalog, and keep track of a movie that is going to sit idle for 99.999% of the time that I own it, the convenience of streaming is just so inviting. Music. We used to listen to an album. Eventually, we got fancy with those 4-loader CD trays that could shuffle through a few albums. But now, with having a virtual endless supply of music over the internet, if you want to own a selection of music that is in any way comparable to just the infinite music at your fingertips, it needs to be so large. And we were experiencing this back, 10, 20 years ago. We'd be building up our libraries of MP3s, thousands and thousands of files. It just gets so cumbersome and impractical to manage. Again, streaming is just so much more convenient. But video games? I mean, you could easily spend 20 hours on a video game you enjoy. In that time, you can watch 10 movies or listen to 400 songs. A good video game becomes a part of your life for some amount of time. I spend hundreds to thousands of hours on video games I really like. There's no amount of convenience that would convince me to not want to own that game. That's like saying, well, it's inconvenient to own a home, so just rent for the rest of your life. If you own a home, if you own a game, it can't be taken away from you. Asterisk, yeah. If you're renting, then hey, they could increase the cost of your monthly subscription at any time. The landlord can go bankrupt and you get evicted from your home. Ubisoft can either shut down and you lose access to all of their games, or they can just remove games from their catalog at any time. You have zero control. It's all in their hands. And I don't want that to be the future of the industry. But unfortunately, it's gonna happen. Because this is what young people are being raised into, and it's being normalized for them, and there's just not going to be pushback, and we're going to fade away, and we're going to become the minority, and it's just going to happen. Now, I'm not trying to say there's no merit in video game streaming services, but on the contrary, I think it's a great value way to try out different games. I think for some people, it makes a lot of sense to go with this. I think for people that like to bounce through a lot of games, especially in a month, or maybe play a different game every month, this is ideal for them. But if I really like a game, and I want to keep playing this one game for the foreseeable future, I'd want to own that game if I had the option to own it. And I know a lot of similar arguments can be leveled against always online games. Do we really own a game if, once the company shuts down and the servers are dead, we can't play it anymore? You don't really own such a game. You own an all-access pass to the amusement park. It's a step better than just streaming, but if that amusement park ever shuts down, then your pass is worthless. Now, Larian Studios CEO Sven Vink put out his own thoughts on the matter on Twitter. He said, quote, "Whatever the future of games looks like, content will always be king. But it's going to be a lot harder to get good content if subscription becomes the dominant model and a select group gets to decide what goes to the market and what not. Direct from developer to players is the way. Getting a board to okay a project fueled by idealism is almost impossible, and idealism needs room to exist, even if it can lead to disaster. Subscription models will always end up being a cost-benefit analysis exercise intended to maximize profit. There's nothing wrong with that, but it may become a monopoly of subscription services. We are already all dependent on a select group of digital distribution platforms, and discoverability is brutal. Should those platforms all switch to subscription, it'll become savage. In such a world, by definition, the preference of the subscription service will determine what games get made. Trust me, you really don't want that. TLDR, You won't find our games on a subscription service. Even if I respect that for many developers, it represents an opportunity to make their game. I don't have an issue with that. I just want to make sure the other ecosystem doesn't die because it's valuable. Just when I thought it was impossible to think any more highly of the studio that brought us Baldur's Gate 3, Sven Vink comes and holds the line, fighting the good fight. Sven Vink, whose company proved that the market will reward genuinely good, honest games that are made for gamers to enjoy and are not made as products for consumers to maximize profits for shareholders. And by the way, all Larian's games have no DRM in them, meaning, first off, they could be pirated. And despite that, Baldur's Gate 3 was an enormous financial success, despite Ubisoft's past claims a long time ago, that 95% of PC games are pirated. Yeah, 95%. I guess that means Baldur's Gate 3 actually would have sold 100 million copies, if not for piracy, right? And meaning second, that if and when anything may happen to Larian, there are no authentication servers, nothing will ever stop you from being able to play the game that you bought and own. And you know, as Sven was talking about the cost-benefit analysis of what games will get greenlit under this model, Netflix comes to mind here. Netflix, who long ago, right, they started making their own original content. It was mostly trash, but then they started to actually pull off some pretty good shows. And then bam, they just start canceling a ton of their shows without giving them a proper ending. Because even though those shows were well liked, the numbers just weren't hitting Stranger Things levels. And so you got to give all that money to Stranger Things instead. Nothing against Stranger Things, I love the show, but there were other great shows that deserved a second season. Just like there will be a bunch of games that deserve to get made, but won't be greenlit under a streaming service monopoly. And if the industry standard becomes streaming services, if that's where everyone finds their games, then selling a standalone game by yourself will be like opening up a hot dog stand 5 blocks away from the football stadium and hoping the Cowboys fans get drunk enough to wander down some alleys and stumble upon your shop. Anyway, I hope we see more companies like Larian. But we gotta do our job too. People always say, vote with your wallet. And other people say that never works because you can't stop other people from throwing their money at whatever dumb stuff they want to throw their money at. And in fairness, it's their right to do so. People can spend their money however they want. You can't control them. But what you can control is who you choose to give your money to. That's what voting with your wallet means. Reward the developers and the companies that you feel deserve it. Tell people about them. Spread the word. Help these companies succeed. That's what you can do to effectuate change. Alright, moving on to some Diablo 4 news. In case you missed it, we had the reveal of Diablo 4 Season 3 this week. It started on Tuesday with a blog post, then on Wednesday, they released a trailer. Thursday, they had the dev stream talking at length about the season, and then on Friday, we got the full patch notes. The press tour also happened this week with some journalism outlets actually able to release a few unknown details. Be sure to check out my first video on the reveal that goes over the season theme, as well as my recap video that goes over the details on how everything is going to work. Now, as for those extra details, we knew that there would be 2 new uber unique tuning stones for the season mechanic. And while the devs kept them a mystery from us, it turns out that PC Gamer actually had a scoop on what one of the 2 of them was. In an interview with them, systems game designer Sean White said, "Let's just say this, if you were to find a unique tuning stone, that is in and of itself bragging rights, because it is going to increase either your own power or the Seneschal's, like, let's just say a lot, very many lots." And PC Gamer was able to share this screenshot here of the Evernight unique tuning stone, which makes the supported skill grant you +4 to all skills when used for 2.0 seconds. That means, folks, that you're gonna have your own Shaco, your own Harlequin crest, with significant uptime. And that would stack on top of an actual Shaco that you would have. Now, also on Reddit, someone who claims to be from PC Gamer also expressed that undocumented in the patch notes is the fact that in Helltides, monster density will now be increased. We know that Helltides will now have significantly more uptime, being up all the time except for 5 minutes every hour. But what apparently hasn't been said is that the monster density within will also be higher. Now, I know there's been some mixed reception to Season 3, especially after the first blog post release. I know we were left with some questions, and that reading a bunch of text and seeing some screenshots isn't exactly the most hype way to introduce a new season. And I did see the hype increase on day 2 of this rollout when they actually released their 7-minute video. In my opinion, that should have been the day 1. I get wanting to do a rollout of information, but if you're going to do that, you got to frame it more as teasers before the big drop. After this blog post, we didn't even know that we were getting a nice video on the next day. And I think if certain people had seen the video before the blog post, they would have been more hype. But that's just my opinion. The thing that surprised me the most is that the Reddit memes turned out to be true. When the original teaser last week said evil looms, and Reddit was memeing about an evil loom, when the season literally gave us an evil loom. Yes, this device here is called the loom. Now again, we also got the full patch notes yesterday, and we'll go now through some of the highlights. So first off, a pleasant surprise, we got 2 new items that are going to help support basic skill builds. A pair of gauntlets that makes you cast non-basic skills to get a huge buff to your basic skills, kind of a reverse of the formula. And another item that makes basic skills generate a ton more resource and also do a bunch more damage. They're reworking the Ring of Starless Skies to make it more widely useful. The Melted Heart of Selig is getting changed. It's a nerf to the unkillable builds, but they're buffing it in other ways to compensate. So overall, this is an improvement if you're not trying to run an unkillable build, and it's overall better for the health of the game. They nerfed Overpower. The damage has been cut in half. This is a good change. Overpower was too strong. I don't know now if it's going to be strong enough, still too strong, or too weak. We'll see in practice, but a nerf was needed here. For Barbarians, you're getting huge buffs to charge, effectively more than 10 times more damage, and you can use it more often, more easily. I may want to run a Charge Barb in Season 3. Charge Barb in Diablo 3 was really fun, and if we can replicate this playstyle in D4, that's going to be fun. Then to address the shout meta, right? The problem with barbs is that most optimal barb builds will run 3 shouts because you're just really rewarded for doing so with different Paragon options and items. So they're nerfing the Martial Paragon glyph, or changing it rather. Now it's only buffing non-shout skills. They're also reworking the Echoing Fury aspect so that you only need to have 1 shout active, you don't benefit from multiple. This may actually change the barb meta. For Druid, we're seeing lots of buffs to shapeshifted toughness, huge buff to Thorns Druids. They're reworking the aspect of the Blurred Beast to focus on shred damage rather than poisoning damage, really changing how this aspect works altogether. The Necro's getting a new support item for Bloodlance. Bloodlance was already a solid build, it's going to be even better now. But Bone Spirit is the huge winner here. Between direct buffs to Bone Spirit and a new offensive aspect that is basically turning Bone Spirit into Frozen Orb, but of bone. I may want to also make a Bone Spirit Necro. There's also some buffs to Necro minions, but I don't think it's going to be enough to make Summoner Necro S tier. For Rogue, we're getting a huge buff to enhanced Caltrops. You'll be able to pretty easily get a 40% damage bonus against bosses here. We're seeing a lot of buffs and reworks to a lot of items and skills to make ranged builds more viable in general, and then we get a huge nerf to close quarters combat key passive. That combined with a nerf to the Blade Dancer's aspect, now it could only hit enemies twice instead of 3 times, this is going to potentially drop down Twisting Blades Rogue from S tier to A or even lower. We're seeing nerfs to poison builds, buffs to cold rogues though. Overall, I think ranged rogues are going to be the flavor of the month for rogues in Season 3. For Sorcerer, Meteor may become the best build. They're also getting more ways to apply vulnerable damage. The bug that made Ball Lightning deal way too much damage has been fixed. I doubt Ball Lightning will remain S tier. Then some general changes. The chance for Scattered Prisms to drop when defeating an elite monster has been reduced. So, way in the past, we got all of our Scattered Prisms from world bosses, basically. Then they changed things so that we can get them from elites, and now we didn't really have to farm world bosses anymore. Well, now they're making us have to do more than just play the game normally to get these Scattered Prisms, but we can acquire them now from Legion event chests, so they're trying to funnel us towards Legion events to get them. We're also seeing that World Tier 3 and 4 World Boss weekly caches can now drop unique items. That's good. However, we've seen a nerf to World Boss drop item level. That's bad. Uber bosses have also had their item level nerfed. everyone but Duriel. Duriel maintains the 925 drops. But we are seeing a buff to high-tier Nightmare Dungeon loot item power, so that by Nightmare Dungeon level 90 plus, you are guaranteed 925 drops. So overall, what are we seeing here? You don't have to go do world bosses to get 925 items. Now, if you're doing Nightmare Dungeons 90 plus, that's where you can reliably farm 925 items. You're not being funneled into doing just world boss and just uber bosses for the 925s. I'm a little confused about funneling us towards Legion events for Scattered Prisms, but I kind of like Legion events, so I'm fine with that. But the biggest and most significant change that the devs didn't tell us about: now Uber Uniques can be unlocked as transmogs. Yes, if you find yourself a Harlequin crest, you can now get that transmog. In other news, we got the official gameplay trailer for city survival game Frostpunk 2. And it's sounding like SimCity Dystopic Nightmare Cortisol Edition as directed by Ari Aster. And I mean that in the best way possible. I've never seen such an emotionally evocative, immersive city survival game. Frostpunk 1 was an excellent game. It's launching on PC in the first half of 2024 and will be available day one with PC Game Pass. And it'll also come to Xbox Game Pass upon release on Xbox Series XS and PS5. We also got a trailer this week for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, a new adventure game that mixes combat, stealth, puzzles, gunplay, traversals, and lots of whipping action. This one's made by Machine Games, who made a bunch of Wolfenstein games over the past decade, and this one looks like it's going to be a good bit of fun. Then in some Elden Ring news, expansion release date rumors have been heating up. Elden Ring YouTuber Ziostorm spotted a new Elden Ring DLC package being added to the game files for the first time since launch. And while this isn't confirmation of anything happening, he pointed out for that both Dark Souls 2 and 3, it was roughly 2 months before their DLCs released that the game files were added. Elden Ring's Shadow of the Erdtree DLC expansion was revealed in early 2023, but no release date was given. But just a month ago, in December, there were multiple alleged retailer leaks that had merchandise launching alongside the Erdtree expansion slated for February. So could it be February? Could it be March? Overall, things are heating up. Elden Ring released on February 25th, 2022, so they could be holding out for an anniversary type thing. Then in some Path of Exile news, Redditor lol3 pointed out that the current league, the current expansion Affliction, has had the highest player retention in a very long time. Well over a month into the expansion, and more than 45% of players were still playing. The league with the next highest retention rate was Sanctum, which was at 41% on the same time frame. And in general, just historically, after just a couple of weeks, half the population is generally gone. So this league is truly performing well. And some theories as to why are that it's just a really casual friendly league with a lot of loot. But I turn the question to you folks. I know a lot of you have been playing Path of Exile lately. What are your thoughts on Affliction, and why do you think its retention has been so spectacularly good? Because it's really not uncommon for these seasonal based games to have a lot of their player count dip. Within, 3 weeks, most players are gone. And it's nothing against the game, it's not saying the game is bad, this is just how these cycles tend to work. A bunch of players come back for the excitement of a new league to test out the new stuff, but then give it a couple of weeks and it's mostly just the diehards that are still playing. Not everyone wants to play the same game for 3 months straight. Only people like me. But yeah, folks, sound off with your thoughts, because that's going to wrap up this video. But do be sure to check out last week's video in which we discussed how Diablo 4 seemed to be copying Grinding Gear Games' intro. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more gaming content.